Today, we are really lucky, however, to have a really, really balanced bail attorney and a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas with us. Mr. Ken W. Good, sir, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, man, we're really happy to have you here. Ken reached out to us, and my eyes absolutely lit up when I saw the email from his assistant come in talking about zooming in on these facts. Let's get right into it, man. Let's start with something that hopefully will help create a base for this entire conversation. What is a crime? What is a crime? If there are, of course, many answers to that, many philosophical answers, as well as hard factual legal answers. Ken, what do you think a crime is?
It is something that society has chosen that we do not want to take place. So there are significant things, there are really bad things that we have chosen as society that we don't want to happen, such as capital murder. But we also have, small things that we decide that we don't want to take place as a society. It can be theft. Something that we're debating right now is over whether marijuana should be continue to be on the unwanted or list of things that society should not sanction. And I think that one of the things that in this debate we should be doing is revising or reviewing that list to decide what it is that is as a society that we want to be crimes, because you know we tend to just keep adding stuff to the list over the years, over and over and over, and so we never do the opposite. We never go back and review and to say, hey, maybe we should take this off. Like one time peeing in public was a crime. I don't know if anyone has prosecuted in 20 years or 100 years, but it's still a crime on the books in some places.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, what we're talking about now is social norms that have become officially written down by legislators and passed to become hard laws that are enforced by police officers, sheriffs, and state police everywhere and other federal agencies, right? Social norms. Like you said, we're thinking about taking some stuff off. A lot of things that people are talking about. Marijuana is one of the really big ones, of course, a really popular topic. Um, I would say that that's a social norm today. But of course, the laws don't change overnight, right? How do we get to that point? What exactly is that process?
Ooh, well, we're having a big debate right now about who has the decision on whether we're going to have this as a crime anymore. We have jurisdiction, and that's part of the problem because that undermines the whole criminal justice system, where you can go to one county and they will still prosecute a certain crime or a certain activity. And let's don't even talk about marijuana. Let's talk about something that's like catalytic converter theft or theft under $950. In California, we downgrade it from a felony to a misdemeanor, and then in our urban areas, they've decided that they're not going to prosecute that anymore. And so you've got one county that will prosecute it as a misdemeanor, and you've got another county that won't even prosecute it at all. That sends a bad message to our society. It undermines the whole criminal justice system. So I would argue, the legislature is the one that passes the laws. They should be the ones that decide what is a crime and what is not. And if we're going to have this, divergent system of enforcement, all that does is undermine the faith in the courts.
Yeah, I agree. That would definitely undermine the faith in the courts. The courts is something that is supposed to be working for us, right? Society should definitely benefit from that, and I think a lot of people out there are starting to become a little bit they're being rubbed the wrong way, man. And
Yeah.
it's going to come to a boiling point, and like the stuff that we're talking about here today, we need to have more of these conversations, not only on of course podcasts everywhere, radio stations, TV stations, you name it, but in our homes when we go out to the town square, interact with our communities. These are really important topics. We just can't skip over them and trust that the government's going to come save us, right?
I had a podcast with a sheriff of a large county, and he told me something that I really hadn't thought about. It's like he said 80% of the people in his county jail share three things. Number one is they don't have a high school education. Number two, there's no fathers in their life. And number three, they have some outside influence, like is gangs or drugs. And I'm like, the one that really stuck out to me is there's no father in their life. So there's no one setting an example for them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know people have good examples of their fathers. They have bad examples of their fathers. But what I take from that, or what I tell my kids, is, your default is what you were raised. So if you have a father in your life and he was a crappy father, your default is to be crappy in that same way, unless you make an affirmative decision to do something different. But you have to make an affirmative decision to do something different. But what we have is we have a generation, a large percentage, that have no fathers in their lives because we as a society have failed families. And we're seeing that in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I
Yep,
completely agree with you there.
100% agree. There needs to be a lot of reform on the way we try to rehabilitate people. Just putting them in a cell and locking them up and giving them 3 meals and a cot doesn't rehabilitate somebody. Doesn't change their mindset. Doesn't change the way they approach life, and it doesn't give them the tools and the resources to even begin to change and try to better themselves. There's a big issue on the way we treat prisoners and the way we treat criminals on that type of rehabilitation context.
Oh yeah, and that leads us right into the next topic perfectly. Big question: is our system punitive, rehabilitative, or somewhere in between?
Well, I would say it's both, because we have a individual that goes through the criminal justice system from first-time offender all the way to career criminal. When they first get to the criminal justice system, nobody's going to hold them. They're going to probably be released on their own recognizance. I doubt they'll be even required to have a bond, because we only want to impose the minimum amount of pressure on them to get them to become productive citizens. But as they get arrested over and over again, the first people that are going to abandon them are their friends. And then the last people usually to abandon them are their families, if they have families. But even then you can, screw your family enough where they don't have any money anymore to help you, either to go to rehab or to hire an attorney or to post a bond. And at that point in time, you've been arrested so many times, you are a career criminal. And at that point in time, we are punitive, because we have decided that there's no amount of pressure that can be put on you to rehabilitate you. So we are going to, that's where we get the old saying that you need to pay the piper. You've got to pay your dues.
Oh yeah, definitely. I totally agree that you got to pay your dues. Nobody should get off scot-free. A lot of the topics we talk about on the Anti-Politics podcast are very, and now this is with a little L, not the political party, very libertarian in nature, and even a little bit of anarchist influence. But I heard something interesting the other day, and it was a great point that I had known all along, but I really wasn't totally sold on it until I thought about it. Anarchy is not without order, right? So
Say that again. Anarchy is not without order. That almost sounds like an oxymoron.
It almost does. It's not a circle around the A; it's an O for order, and there would be hierarchy, right? I think it goes without saying that there's a lot of people out there that would go absolutely nuts in an anarchist society, and I'll give you one example that I really like. Go to the grocery store. Look at the parking lot. Are the carts in the corrals, or are they sitting in the parking spaces? There's a dude with a YouTube channel entirely devoted to being the cart police. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that before. He like antagonizes people who don't put their shopping carts away, and I think he's bringing to light a very bigger picture here. It's a great litmus test for society. When you are not being looked at, are you going to do the right thing? Are you going to act with integrity? And we really trust people to, totally self-govern. Now let's go back to our. Oh, go ahead,
I've heard articles before, or read articles before, about that's a great tool used when you're interviewing somebody. You put something in the room or right on the desk that is out of place, that is taken apart, or the chair is in the wrong place, and you want to hire the applicant that comes in and says, this is not correct, and then on their own corrects it. And I think there are some groups that that is a part of their interview process. And I actually like that, because that is my mentality. If I think it's out of place, or is, if there's a mess in the floor, somebody dropped something and I run up to it, I'm going to fix it and put the trash away instead of just walk over it. And I think that a lot of companies want that type of employee who have that type of initiative. But the way I would apply that to our criminal justice discussion, I would say, we don't have anarchy in our urban areas right now, because there's always somebody that's in control, but we are turning over our urban areas to organized crime, gangs, and career criminals, and they're the ones in charge of our urban cities right now. And I think it's short-sightedness on the part of our elected officials or some of the decision makers if they think that they're doing good by doing that.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the point that Rob was making too. A lot of people think that anarchy means chaos, that the definition of anarchy is just chaos. Well, really, it means the lack of a state, right? You don't have a governing body that is that large telling you what to do and how to live. However, the other side of that coin does not mean that you can't have communities that people volunteer to live in and volunteer for the laws and the way you need to go about life in those certain communities. So, and most people see anarchy. If we had anarchy, say we take a pocket, Ohio, all of a sudden the government's gone, the state's gone, federal government's gone. The way it could work is that you would have towns, you would have communities, and people would govern themselves through their own small private community, and it would all be volunteeristic. So the laws that they put on the books there, the rules they have, everything like that, that's all volunteered by a small pocket. And the reason why so many people are drawn to this is because mob rule, which is what democracy is, right? And most people forget that we're actually a republic. We're not a democracy, we're a democratic republic. But that is mob rule. If you have 51% of people that say this, you have no way out of it. Now, if you had an anarchist style communities around you, and your community all of a sudden comes up with this law and you don't like it, but the community 10 miles down the road is different and they have a different point of view, then you would have the ability to live where you wanted to, that has the same laws and social norms and structure that fit you and your moral compass, right? Doesn't mean that we can't have police. You can have police, absolutely. Doesn't mean you're not going to have people that are going to break laws anymore, but it does mean that you have the option to live in a way where you're the most comfortable and you have the most freedom possible, and the community can thrive in those kind of situations. So it's just, people don't ever take a deep dive on the thought process of what anarchy is and could be had it been used correctly. The Wild West is a big example. For some reason, it's called the Wild West, even though most towns in the West was being developed, they were gun-free zones. You couldn't walk into that town with turning your gun into the sheriff's office. Some weren't that way. A lot were. It's a very different way of thinking about it and thinking about what our potential communities and living structure could be.
Well, I'm going to say I disagree with you a little bit, because there's some philosophers, and I think Hobbes is one of them, that says, we all live in chaos, and chaos is we're fighting for your power. So if you and I were to meet in a state of anarchy, when we meet, you're going to want to take my power, I'm going to take your power. The compromise is when we come together to live in a society, whether it's the United States or a little town or the Old West in a city. The compromise is safety. The compromise is order. And so the difference I would make, or the point I would make in the difference, is commonality, the common community. In a city, we all have, in the Old West, we all had the same values. We all had the same goals. And so we all agreed that if you come to our town, you got to turn in your gun to the sheriff. Or we agreed that my sister Sally was assaulted, and we all agree that Jim Bob did it. So we're going to get a posse and we're going to go get Jim Bob, and we're going to decide the punishment right then. The difference today is we are so bifurcated in our society. We no longer have the commonality, the common goals. We have different goals, and so we can't agree. And so, like you said, 51% can decide something, and it may be against my goals, my morals. And I think that that's a result of we no longer have these common experiences that we've historically always had.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with most of what you're saying there. But the option to have other communities around you where the communities are self-governing, right, is the biggest piece of that. Because you
I
can
don't
then
have any
decide,
problem. I don't have
you
any
can
problem with
then
the different.
decide, you can then decide where you want to live. And it's not the government of the state or the federal government telling everybody what has to happen, what it is. You have pockets of communities. It could be a small pocket, over here where it's just straight free anarchy and they don't have any laws or anything, but the people are going to protect and take care of themselves. And they're going to make sure that, you're not on their land, you're not hurting people. The people would end up doing it themselves. You could have pockets where it's very, very strict and almost like you're living in a prison in this community, but some people would want that. But the fact that most people take their safety and their priorities and give it to the state, they sacrifice freedom for convenience. They sacrifice freedom for protection. We shouldn't have a nanny state like that. We should have people that the moral compass isn't coming from religion. It's not coming from the state. It's coming from what is right. Don't hurt people and don't take their shit is the basic foundation of that thought process.
Well, I do think historically the commonality does come from religion, but it doesn't have to. I mean, the commonality can be in a sense of a country, a sense of nationality that we're all pulling together. We can have differences. We can have different nationalities. We can have different schemes for our little communities, but we all come together. Where I see the hole in that and where we have historically had a problem is when we have a period of national conflict, like World War I, World War II, because we have to, I'm not going to say we have to, but the problem with during those periods, we turned over large pockets of control to the national government. Because if you think about it, early on, the United States was just a group of states, and all the control really was held by the individual communities or the individual states. That changed, and I would say World War I was probably the first big change because we turned over a large part of control of society to the national government. And when it takes it, it doesn't really give it back very easily.
Mm-hmm. 100% correct on that. They're never going to give anything back like that. You have to take it back. And I would say World War I and World War II definitely were the steepest declines in that, but it really started with the Civil War and it started with the federal income tax. That's when things really started to go downhill.
Well, and I think World War I is a good case study, and we have a sense of commonality that was completely different for the southern states, and their economy was based upon it. And so that didn't have anything to do with religion. That had to do with economics. And also, their economics were based upon free labor, or slave labor. And so that was a fight over the future of, our country. And I can understand that. I can see why you would fight over those issues. And so I can see that. But, when we come back to the issue of criminal justice and bail reform, and you see, we're now taking positions where we're kind of applying those same theories, but we're using it to tie the hands of judges so that they can't do anything about organized crime. They can't do anything about gangs, and they can't do anything about career criminals. And they're doing it in the name of, we have to protect the poor. Well, I have a problem with that. I mean, if we're going to turn over our inner cities to gangs and we can't do anything to them in the name of we're protecting the poor, there's a problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rob, you go ahead. I think you have a pretty good answer to this.
You go ahead, man. I'll let you take this one. I'll follow
up. So I was just going to say that comes down to also why, part of the Second Amendment exists too, is that people need to practice their own self-protection. You can't rely on anybody else for your protection. You have to only rely on yourself. And part of that is these big cities that are having this bail bond reform where they're letting people out, they kill somebody and 2 days later they're back on the streets because of this bail bond reform. They also have the strictest gun laws in the country too.
Yep.
So they're not allowing people to take care of themselves and be able to protect themselves. They're intentionally creating a nanny state situation. And then they're creating chaos by allowing people that are actively out there to try to hurt people, to try to take their stuff, and not allowing people any way of protecting themselves. The community armed, if the community is armed, a community is safe. You can't just let the criminals have guns and weapons. You have to have everybody be able to have, the same protection for themselves as well too.
Yeah.
That also comes down to training. If you have a gun, train with it. Do your dry
Well,
firing.
but
Get out to the range. Do tactical training. If you're going to be able to protect yourself and take that in your own hands, make sure that you're not going to hurt somebody else unintentionally because you didn't train. You're not, you don't know how to utilize that weapon. And the biggest thing I like to put this towards is a car can be a weapon, right? But most people don't consider a car a weapon because they have a driver's license, they were trained, and they're proficient on how to use that car. Same thing comes down to firearms.
We're repeating a lot of the same problems. We're repeating a lot of the same errors that we did in the 60s. In the 60s, we felt safe. We were more forgiving on crime. We released more criminals from jail. We saw crime increase. And then we started enacting stricter gun laws. We were telling people, don't protect yourself. You had an incident in New York 20 years ago where a guy pulled out a gun on the subway when someone approached him and tried to rob him, and he went to trial over defending himself because the elected officials did not want him to do that. And the message they wanted to send to everybody else is you can't do that. You can see that repeating this year where someone was on the subway in New York and he saw something going on and he didn't like it. And he was a veteran and he stepped in and other people helped him. He put a chokehold on the guy and the guy ended up dying, because he would not, cooperate. And what are they doing? They're now prosecuting the veteran who stepped in to protect the public because they don't want you to protect yourself. I mean, they don't want you to protect, they want you to give the criminals what they want. That's where we are right now. And I mean, it doesn't make sense. I agree with what you said exactly. If you, the government, cannot protect me, at least allow me the means to protect myself. And the problem is we have a lot of urban areas where they want both. They don't want to protect you and they don't want you to protect yourself. That's just crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And we're kind of riding the fence here into the next topic. But before we get there, I just want to talk about a few more things. Let people know that, there are other factors that really, really deeply impact what we're talking about now. You're talking about what's the hammer? We're getting towards what's the hammer now. How do we stop people from committing the same crimes again? How do we incentivize good behavior? So in the United States, we have a pretty bad problem with recidivism. We have a lot of people that are in jails and prison. I think the last number I saw most recent was upwards of 25% of the world's prison population being here. I might be a little off.
But why is that a surprise? We send all of the drugs in the entire world to the United States, or a disproportionate percentage of them to the United States. So why would it be surprising? Since most crime arises from drug trade in some way, why would it surprise us that we would have 25% of the prison population when everybody's sending their drugs to the United States?
Right. A lot of people get in trouble for that because it's illegal. Their schedule of substances, right? And now we're looping back to the beginning where we were talking about social norms, what should and should not be a crime, right? But those are the hard numbers, right? So this is where we're at right now. So we need to talk about what the hammer is. In my personal opinion, if you have a member of society who keeps doing the same dang thing over and over again, can't stop, won't stop, doesn't show any signs of improving, why is he out of jail? Or why are they out of prison? Why are they allowed to go back to the streets? And to a certain extent, we do have protections against that. There are baby steps that they are required to follow. And, if you're a convicted felon, you get released on parole or even free, even you can't do certain things right away, right? It's throttled. It's throttled freedom. But if you're out there not being watched, we're again depending on the honor system. When nobody's looking, when they walk into that room for the job interview, are they going to piss that piece of paper off the floor and throw it in the trash? Are they going to put the chair back? Are they going to put the shopping cart back? Like I said earlier, go to the store and look at the parking lot. Look at all the carts all over the place. We need to figure out as a society what the hammer is. It's not a political thing. All right. We need to really crunch these numbers. Ken, what do you think the hammer should be?
Well, I think when you get to the hammer, it's become so political, but we need to take politics out of it. But it kind of goes back to the very concept. The very root of the question is, are good people good or bad? I mean, when you're talking about, will they return the cart? Will they pick up the piece of paper? You kind of want to say people are generally good. So that would say, well, generally they want to do the right thing. So you don't have to incentivize them because their basic morality is good. But you know what? We have a whole lot of philosophers and philosophies, and even the Bible is based on the premise that we are not essentially good. I mean, the Bible says we're sinners saved by grace. Hobbes says we're fighting for each other's power, and so we don't care how we get it. So I would say the hammer is accountability, because look at the First Step Act. I mean, that was probably considered one of Trump's good things, but I did a podcast about it, and the First Step Act, or a guest was mentioning it. It's just, the government didn't look at individuals to say, have you been rehabilitated? Do you deserve to be let out? Because the government doesn't have the time or money or energy to do an individual assessment. So they made across the board determinations. And that's the problem we have, is the government is not good at doing this type of thing because it's expensive. And so the hammer is accountability. And if we are refusing, or if we're unable to hold people accountable, we got a problem, because the accountability is what incentivizes good behavior. I mean, I've heard some people talking recently about, like the city of Houston is a big old city, but inside the city of Houston, there's a smaller city of criminals, and they're the ones harassing the big majority of the crimes. Well, but there's a gray area between the two cities. And on any given day, the people that live in that little gray area, they're deciding, am I going to be a law-abiding citizen today? Well, I saw that person get punished, so I'm not going to follow that path. Or the opposite, they say, that guy's been arrested 5-6 times. Nothing happened to him. I'm joining the crime city. And so the smaller city of criminals right now is growing by robust numbers, because they're looking to see what is the punishment that the citizens of the crime city that are harassing the larger city, what's happening to them? And the answer right now is nothing. They're not being held accountable. And so the criminal justice system can have a big influence on people's decisions in the gray area. We can't do anything about career criminals, gang members, or organized crime. We just have to figure out how to get them out of commission. But we're not doing anything to influence the mid city, and we're failing citizens. We're actually causing it to be worse because we're not addressing it.
See, this is where my nihilism sort of affects my thinking on the subject, or borderline nihilism, I suppose. There's many people out there who are set in their ways. Whether you prefer Hobbes or Rousseau, or inherently good versus inherently evil, or you prefer something more like tabula rasa theory, which says that people are more definitely shaped by their experiences. So whether or not you believe in any of those things, I think that we need to focus back on the family unit. All these people that are set in their ways, they're going to stay that way.
I'm looking at the definition of nihilism. It says the rejection of all religious or moral principles and the belief that life is meaningless. So if my life is meaningless,
right,
I can do anything I want, because
that's why I was sort of saying borderline nihilism. Because if I sank totally into nihilism, I don't think I'd be here trying to move forward on this subject. But what I meant was, yes, the belief that everybody can be saved. For me, I'm not totally sold on that yet, or maybe not ever, right? So like that's where I think that maybe we should focus on building strong communities, put all the focus there, build the family unit, fathers in homes, mothers in homes, everybody's nice to each other, cut back on the abuse of substances, and
this
education.
Is where I call you Pollyanna, for the the movie named after her that was a long time ago. Probably makes me sound really old, but I mean, those are all great things and those are great goals. But when you start talking about that, it's like people are going to go say, well, that's unattainable and you're just being Pollyanna. And I'm like, well, I mean, we got to start with something. We got to start with a goal. And I agree. I mean, we have things that are the reality, but those have to be our goals, because I agree the sense of family will have the biggest impact on not only crime, but also on people's success. And we're hurting families. We're not helping them. We're not encouraging them. We're encouraging them to fall apart. I mean, I understand that. I understand that getting married is one of those moments, and then having kids is one of those moments that stresses your life, and you don't know whether you're going to love it or hate it. But once you create this little child, you have an impact on it. You're making it into a human. I mean, you will impact the rest of their life more than you will ever know. And just by leaving will have an impact on them the rest of their life. And
Right.
that's generally negative.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, for this example, time is like a river, and I feel just trying to fight back. It's like almost like I feel like we're fighting backwards, right? We're trying to swim super hard upstream up a mountain, and I think we should be going forwards, right, and building.
Well, I think we're just committing the same error. We're following the same circle that we followed in the 60s. So in the 60s, we felt safe. We've already talked about that. But we're going to have a backlash, just like we did in the 60s, which brought us Ronald Reagan, which brought us getting tough on crime. And that's where we're headed. I mean, if you don't realize it, we are headed to a huge backlash on crime, because what we're doing right now is not sustainable. And so we can't continue it. And so we've had a big shift to the left. And so there will be a corresponding shift to the right at some point. And we know it for sure, because the left is, their response right now is, oh, it's not real. Crime isn't really increasing. That's just a Republican talking point. It's not actually taking place. So they're just in denial, because if they admit there's a problem, then the backlash will happen even quicker, because they created it. It's coming. It's just a question of whether, the 60s, and then Ronald Reagan was at the beginning of the 80s. That's 20 years. It's going to be ugly, I'm afraid. And you know what? The people on the left brought it on themselves, because they took the policies, pushed them, and then went extreme with them, and did pro-criminal, anti-victim, and turned over our urban cities to organized crime, gangs, and career criminals. And, there's a statistic out that said, oh, I wrote it down earlier today because I was doing something else, but it said that from 1994 to 2014, we reduced the crime rate. Crime went down during that time period. And so the life expectancy of the average Black man went up the equivalent of 1 year. That's the equivalent of beating obesity. And so that's because 50% of murders are done on Black people, because there's a disproportionate number of crimes that happen to them than the rest of the population. So when we have crime increase, that's going to affect minority communities quicker and by a larger percentage, because they're the ones that have crime committed against them disproportionately. And so, this is it's not sustainable. It can't continue, and it's going to be ugly, because we're just repeating the cycle that we did in the 60s.
Right.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people try to say that, oh, the system's broken. The system's broken. No, the system's working exactly how it was designed to work. The system was never designed to help us. It was designed to take as much money from us and to make us cash slaves, basically, to the government, and to make us so just pissed off in the situation and scared and have no control over how we are able to affect that we have to look at the government. We have to then say, oh, a nanny state is the only way we can get out of this. Please, government daddy, take care of me. But they're actively putting policies into place. They're actually putting laws in place that cause this to happen, that cause it to happen more. And it's a snowball, and it's just going to keep getting worse until we have some mass noncompliance. where people finally put their foot down and say, nope, this is how it's going to be from now on. And we start voting these motherfuckers out of office that are actively trying to destroy our lives for their own enrichment and their own power grab.
Well, I blame a lot of this on identity politics. And, I think it started 4 or 5 election cycles ago, where you would see the same thing happen about 6 months before a national election. You would see some scandal or something that would that one side of the electorate would gin up and say to their minority group, you need to get mad. You are not being treated fairly. And you need to come out in larger numbers in this election to vote for us to win. And then I would say in the last election, you saw that, plus you saw a promise made to students. We will do a wealth redistribution to you to cover 10,000 or 20,000 of your student loans if you will vote for us. And that's all it was. We can't do it. We can't do it anymore with just making one of our subsets angry. Now we must promise students, something that they're not entitled to, and they call it, we're going to forgive their debt, when it's really wealth redistribution.
Yeah,
and then on top of that, we've got, we had this happen several election cycles, and the problem is once the election was over, that party would go back to everything as usual. And so now we've got that party electing the true believers who are standing up and saying, okay, I'm going to do these things. And so we're enacting the left of the electorate, and they are doing things that I think the party originally was just using as pure rhetoric, and now we're seeing the consequences. And so we have this mob taking over one side of the electorate, and it's just causing these terrible policies where we're turning the back on public safety. We're turning the back on we're turning the back on the same minorities that they're saying that they're standing up for. Those are the people who are being hurt the worst. And if you say anything else, you're a racist. You are, everybody should ignore you because you're not in the right identity. And that's why I can say it's just not, it's not sustainable. So it will fall apart. And when it falls apart, it will be ugly. And that's the reason why you're seeing these, the student promises. I think that had to be done because they couldn't have won that election without that. And so they knew that it wasn't going to stand up. The Supreme Court was never going to allow it, but they didn't care. They wanted to just win the next election.
Yeah. And that I will comment on that, the way that they promised all these young people forgiveness for these loans. The idea was great when they went into it, and unfortunately, these particular people sold that idea to these young people who are just entering the professional field, right? They're fully invested now. It's getting forgiven. They're going balls to the wall in their education, and when it's all said and done, boom, unconstitutional. Now you got potentially $50,000, $100,000 of debt from whatever institution you went to, because it's life ruining, man. And people, I don't know about you personally, but when I went to high school, I graduated 2009. I didn't learn much about the economy in high school. It wasn't required for me to really go in depth and learn about finances. We went as far as playing the stock market game and doing some brief things in history. And but I'm digressing a little bit here. Back to the original point, you cannot expect these people to save you. They are selling you these things so that you will vote for them. You need to be very careful and mindful of the choices that you make, because, like I said, they're not coming to save you. This is where your self-government ability comes in, to control your finances, to control your health, and to control your relationships that you have with people in your family and also in your community. So,
what I would add to that is, if it sounds too good to be true, then it's too good to be true.
Right.
To say we can release more criminals from jail and we will be safer. That doesn't make sense. My grandmother would, she would roll her eyes if you were to say that to her, if she was still alive. And so if it lacks common sense, it doesn't have common sense. And we're kind of going through that problem right now. And, my oldest daughter has graduated from Baylor, and, when she went there, they told us, oh, well, you should talk to the financial aid department anyway, even if you don't think you qualify. And I'm like, they're telling me about students who finance 100% of the cost of 4 years of Baylor, which is about $50,000 a semester. So that's $200,000 of student debt on the day of graduation. First of all, why are we approving student loans for $200,000? I mean, I'm going to show you my age. When I went to college and when I went to law school, it was difficult to get a credit card. And I had to start out with a gas card before I could get a credit card. And when I got a credit card, when I was in law school, my credit limit was $800. I don't think that happens anymore. I think they give out credit cards like candy, and you can get out a $10,000 credit limit so easily. And I think that those are all mistakes. I mean, we're just setting people up for failure, just like we are in the criminal justice system. We're not holding them accountable. So they see that as a green light to commit more crime. At some point in time, they're going to cross the line of no return, where we're no longer trying to rehabilitate. Now they have to pay the price. And we have set them up for that, because we are no longer we're in our urban cities. We're not holding people accountable. You miss court 10 times, we'll just reset you, or we'll arrest you and grant you another bond. Or you commit the same crime so many times, we're setting people up for failure, and that should be on us.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're finally arriving at the main topic. Now that our listeners have had a chance to hear that conversation, Ken gave a lot of great information. We're going to talk about bail. Ken is an absolute expert on the subject of bail, very seasoned, being an attorney. He can tell us a lot about bail, what it does to people, and whether or not it actually prevents recidivism. Ken, what are your thoughts on bail and how it affects recidivism?
Well, there's a lot of data that's come out during COVID. So we've got a lot of data from New York. We've got a lot of data from California. And it's kind of refreshing to see that, because a lot of the data has been reinforcing things that we've always said as an industry. But, in Yolo County in California, the DA kept very good records during COVID, and he released a couple of reports. And those reports found that an individual released on a surety bond, which is the private industry looking after you, looking after you and making sure you appear for court, versus somebody just released with either no bond or a personal bond, that the person released on a PR bond, a personal bond, just released for free, has a 20% chance or 25% chance of committing more crime while they're on bond. And also, he found that there was a 200% greater chance that those individuals released on a free bond would commit violent offenses while they were on bond. And so the data has been pretty good about showing that if you want less crime, I'm not going to say you can decrease crime by 25% by using more surety bonds, but for each person individual, you decrease their chances of committing an additional crime by 25%. And that is really substantial numbers.
Yeah, that's huge. So
Yep.
For everybody listening out there, mathematics, very beautiful thing. Everything can be solved with math in both nature and, of course, in the digital world. It's great. It's a great subject. So I feel that this is actually taking the mathematical approach is a very, very balanced and an appropriate response to the problem that we're having here. I think something on the extreme end would be something like how they tried using AI to predict people's crimes,
Yeah.
or that's almost like going backwards and trying to reproduce what Aristotle once thought. That you could infer character from features. Then of course, many hundreds of years later, science happened and said, well, okay, maybe not.
Well, we have that AI now. I mean, we have, this tool that's called a risk assessment that's being pushed by, some groups that are saying, hey, we can make this, a decision that we just push a button and they can tell you whether you to release them whether they're too dangerous to be released. And that is an oversimplification of the whole process. I mean, if you could just make that decision, first of all, the digital companies have come out saying that should not be used as a part of criminal justice reform. And, it has historically it's had a little bit of a racist element to it, because as it's making a decision about your group, it's looking at your group dynamics. And so when it's then taking that and deciding what you will do, it's still taking into consideration your group or your race dynamics in making that prediction. But finally, I would just say, when you're predicting on a group, it's very accurate. But when you're predicting on an individual, it's not accurate at all. I mean, if you were to look at me in 1979, I know that's a long time before y'all were born, and I just kills me to say that. But if you were to make a prediction on me growing up in a farming town, at a dairy, and, really didn't even know the value of education, the prediction that I would have gone and graduated from college or gotten a master's degree or gone to law school, it would have been zero. The chances would have been 1%. And so, I'm an example that, those types of predictions would have never predicted that I would become a lawyer or that I would actually ever be on this show.
Right. Yeah.
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 100%. 100%. I mean, we don't want to live in a minority report society, right? Where we have computer systems or AI predicting what we're going to do.
Well, isn't that the beauty of our country? The people that are very successful are people that have always defied the predictions.
Exactly. And they've done it not by just themselves either, but the people that they surround themselves with, the knowledge that they may gather themselves, like an autodidact or something like that. But it's true reform. If we want to actually help people reform and build better lives, then we have to restructure the system from the ground up. Because right now we're not giving people the chance to reform, and we're just assuming that through an AI system, oh, yep, you're going to go commit another crime. And that could be the case, but we're also not giving them any way to better themselves in the meantime. We're not having, systems that try to help better people and help them better their lives. We're instead just saying, okay, yeah, go ahead, go do this crime and go do it again. Or, oh, no, you got to stay here. It shouldn't be that way. I mean, the system is only designed to create more chaos and create more crime at this point.
Well, I've had some people ask me, it's like, what's so special about the bail industry, the private industry, that makes it so much better than, just releasing people? And really, I think I always like to say the special sauce that the private industry has and that it uses is the involvement of families. As you're getting in trouble and your mother goes and bonds you out of jail and she has stood up for you, you have a 10 times, 100 times better chance of going to court and turning your life around than just releasing you. There's no consequences. And you're like, maybe I'll do it again. And so by limiting the use of the private industry, we're taking away families' chances of turning their loved ones around and to become productive citizens. And it's being done by the government, who's already failed these people through, destruction of families, through schools, just bad schools in the inner cities, rampant drug use in the inner cities, no economic opportunity. But we're going to turn it all around finally in the criminal justice system. No, you're not. All the data we've seen is you're just effing it up worse.
It's all the government really does. Anytime they touch something, they make it worse, right? And then they pat themselves on the back and say, look what we did. We did such a good job.
What are those famous last words? I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Oh, that's fucking scary. Just scary phrase.
Scary words.
And it's true. I mean, they don't create solutions. They create a problem to offer solutions to gain more power.
Well, you know what? I'm going to argue a little bit different. I'm going to say that our friends on the left don't know what to do at this point because they've ginned up the controversy. They've told a portion of their supporters that they were not being treated fairly. Now they've been backed in the corner to enact these policies, which they said is what should be done. And they knew what would happen, and they're seeing it, and they don't know how to get out of the box they put themselves in, because they can't change course because they'll alienate that same group that they've ginned up for years. And so they're in a box and they don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, 100% agree with that because of the phrase that Joe Biden said when he was running for president. If you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Oh,
Mhm.
God. That was so
Yeah,
distasteful.
but Biden was sold himself as the moderate, the last moderate. And we were all saying, oh, well, after him, then they're not going to have any moderates. But I mean, with all the controversy on him, you're like, he has not governed as a moderate. He's never governed one day as a moderate. And so you would argue, well, all the stuff that's coming out on him, people knew because obviously he never governed as the way he promised to. But, the stuff that's coming out on him, I mean, I would even predict that they're wanting Trump as the candidate, and then they're going to replace him with Newsom. And so they think that they can get Newsom in the back door that way.
Oh, God, fucking puke.
Yeah.
He is such scum. And anybody who thinks that Biden was a moderate and won the election because of that, I think is crazy. Biden won the election because he wasn't Trump. That's why people voted for him. And
well, I mean, I would say that there was some weaponization of federal courts to change election statutes. And we know that there's been at least 2 states where the courts ruled that the changes that were made were illegal and should not have been done. And they made them anyway. And I think, I don't know how you can't interpret that to try to manipulate the result. We're being told that if we even say that, we're terrible people, we're insurrectionists. But I mean, when you've got a court ruling that the change that was made right before the election was improper and should not have been done, and you got that in 2 states, and those are 2 of the big states for they were some of the contested states, swing states. Yeah, I mean, okay, so how do we not get to the conclusion that there was some weaponization of the federal courts to impact the election result?
Yeah, I mean, the government uses the federal courts as a weapon all the time. 100% they do. I mean, they're going to get what they want, and they're going to do whatever they have to, and they're not going to follow the laws. They're not going to follow morale code. They're just going to do whatever they have to do to win and to get more power, and that's really all
I do
it comes
agree
down
with that.
to.
I do agree with that, but that's contrary to our history. I mean, we're a democracy. I know you said a republic, but we rely upon the consent of the party that was defeated to really govern. And so what we're doing now is we're going through a period where the party that was defeated is not consenting, and they're doing everything they can to either delegitimize or to take the election any way possible. And so that's really dangerous to our country, because if you can't, I mean, for so many years, we've had this philosophy, well, if I don't win, I will support the winner. And maybe I need to do a better job of convincing the voters next time. We don't have that anymore. Now they were wrong. They got it wrong. It was stolen. It was illegitimate. If they had just realized they really agreed with me. And so we have to fight for those people who didn't vote that really believe with me. And so that's where we are. We're in a period of time where no election result can be accepted by the losing party. And until we get past this time, that will be very damaging to our country.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's why I think these conversations need to happen outside of the political realm. If it was up to me, I'd go to every single company that makes a dictionary and I'd say, hey, for the definition of politics, take out everything except for the management and function inside of a government building. No promises, no campaigns, no showboating, no attacks on each other's character. Just focus on the people that live in this country and what they need. It's all about the constituents.
Yeah, but the problem is all the other stuff works really, really well.
Yeah, it does.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's they're they're experts at marketing.
yeah, negative campaigning works really, really well. I mean, I would say, they played Trump like a playbook, and he won anyway. And so, I mean, I can see Trump getting elected president from prison.
Right.
I mean, what's going to happen then? Because at that point, then I can see both people on both sides saying, "Wouldn't it be great to see what would happen if we elected Trump and he's in prison?"
Yeah.
I don't count that out. I mean, I can
yeah.
it's part
No,
of Trump's strategy. I'll just put me in jail. I'll go up in the polls even more.
well, I mean, again, like it's their entire plan is to create chaos, which going back to what we were talking about earlier, most people think anarchy, the lack of state is chaos. Where let's be honest, a vast majority of the chaos in this country is created by the government, is created by the state.
Well, I think in our criminal justice area, there's a lot of chaos being created, and I think the reason why it's being created is it's to decriminalize certain crime. We don't agree with that being a crime anymore, so we're going to create such chaos that you're not going to have time to prosecute it, so you'll have to dismiss it. And so I think there's some of that going on. I mean, you can see that in Harris County where they have a 80% failure to appear rate on misdemeanors. And, the Yolo County DA says in California, in the misdemeanor courts, where you can't hold anybody accountable, you can't do anything if they don't show up for court, they have an 80% failure to appear rate. I mean, what can that be other than pressure to create chaos to force them to dismiss cases because they're having the same number of cases being added every year on average. So if you're going to keep up, you end up having to dismiss a whole bunch of cases. That's what chaos does. You're just decriminalizing in a backdoor way.
Right. Yep. The state is chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff we talked about today. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. An hour on this show with Ken disappeared like a blink of an eye. We talked about what really is a crime. We talked about what the hammer should really be, bail bonds. We got a little philosophical. We got a little legal. We talked about things that are, hard and factual. We talked about things that are not, so leading out, I think it's good to reflect on all of that and pull the best things you can from that. When we didn't bring Ken here to say, oh, look at this guy that's not a libertarian, totally not involved in our stuff. We're gonna flame him for an hour. These are the conversations that we should be having outside of these shows, right? We need to be cordial with each other, polite. And I swear you'll find a lot of commonalities with people. You start zooming out and zooming in where you need to. Change your perspective every once in a while, y'all. Look at those numbers. Look at what these crazy decisions that they're making are really doing to our country and what kind of effect they have on our futures. Because that's something that we all need to exist in the future. Let's take care of this country. One step at a time. We're going to get there. But as we've said, something has to happen because we're going to reach the boiling point, and especially with crime. It's such a politically charged subject right now. We got to do our best to make it not political. We got to be anti-political about it, right?
100%. We do. I agree with everything you just said there.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's hard to have a conversation when the response is they won't address your argument. All they say is you're racist, and so nobody should listen to you because we don't agree with you. So, I mean, you can't have a conversation. You can't have any type of discussion with people like that, and that's their strategy. They just want you tuned off, tuned out. And so, I'd love to have conversation. I'd love to have conversation with people that disagree with me, as long as it's civil, because we, like you said, we can find common ground, and I think we have a lot of common ground. I mean, you're just
absolutely
on the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, and
sorry, I just had to throw that in.
No, you're good. You're good. And people should remember too that we all shouldn't agree on everything.
That's right.
Like there's no reason that we all should agree on everything, but the respect that you show people should always be there. That's one of the things that this country was founded on, is that you live life the way you want to. I'll live life the way I want to. as long as we're not hurting each other or taking each other's shit, it's fine. Be respectful of your fellow common man and woman. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree, man. Ken, it was a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Hopefully we'll be able to have another one of these discussions up in the future here. Do you got anything you want to plug? Any links or anything you're pushing podcast wise?
Sure. If you want more information, you can go to the pbtx.com website. You can go to our blog. We also have a podcast called The Bell Post. There's a link on our website, but also you can just go to thebellpost.com. It is it's in the top 10 of the 60 best criminal justice podcasts right now. Well, I think we're number 6. I'll jinx it and it'll probably be off the list probably tomorrow. But we've had a lot of guests come on and have civil conversations about bail issues. And that's the reason why, if we're doing anything well and being recognized, it's because of that. Because we're just doing what nobody else will do. We're just having these types of conversations, and we're not calling people names. We're saying, let's find out where the common ground is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man. I love taking politics out of the game. The clarity just pops. I really love it. So for all you listeners out there, I hope you got some really great stuff from this episode. If you want to check us out, we are on Anchor. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. A couple others that the RSS shoots it out to. Pretty much any of the mainstream ones you can find it on. And we're on Twitter at AntiPoliticsPod. That's where we upload all our podcast links. And you can, of course, find our personal pages from there. I'm on Twitter at APRob4. As in the number 4 Liberty, AP Rob for Liberty. You can find Alan on Twitter at Alan_Lemp. Ken, are you on Twitter?
Oh no, I mean, I'm really not. I have things on there so I can follow my kids, but no.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yep. So make sure you check his podcast out. That's really good podcast to check out. A lot of great conversations that happen there. Just like you said, he ain't lying. Ken, you're based in wholesome in my book, and
thank you.
No problem, man. I really appreciate you coming out to our little show here. It's certainly a pleasure having a guest.
Hey, it's been great. We talked earlier and we laughed a lot, and so I mean, laughter to me is I mean, I can't tell you, when you start laughing with somebody, you can't be mad at them. And so we laughed a lot, and we disagreed some, but we still continue to laugh, and I've enjoyed every minute.
Yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, man. Definitely would love to have you back on sometime so we can continue these discussions in more depth, or talk about other broader issues as well too.
Sure.
We love talking with people like yourself because we don't agree on everything, and like you said, we are still able to laugh with each other, have a good time, and set that example of how it should be for people talking with people in their community and online. Also, I want to plug one more social media. It's at drinkyourfuckingwater.com. Drink your fucking water, people. Lift some heavy shit. Do your dry fire training. Take care of community. Go out there, volunteer, see a hole, fill those potholes the city won't fill. Organize and take care of each other.
And I got one more thing to add to that. Get out of that freaking echo chamber. Stop engaging in zealotry. Open your mind, have these conversations with people. That is how you're going to find and form a really strong community. So with that, Ken, once again, want to thank you to my listeners, to our listeners on the Anti-Politics Podcast. You're what makes this happen. We couldn't do this without you and your support. We'll see you next time on the Anti-Politics Podcast with Rob and Alan. Y'all take care now.
Love you guys.
Bye, guys.